Well, NATO leaders gathered in Brussels this week to attend a summit aimed at reaching agreement on a number of key principles, from multilateral cooperation to their commitment to the treaty. But with Monday's attack in Britain overshadowing that meeting, member countries were quick to find common ground on the war on terror. Less clear, now that there's a new U.S. president, is who should pay for it. VOA Europe correspondent Luis Ramirez has our report from Brussels.
The U.S. leader wants a boost in NATO contributions for the war effort. But Germany's Angela Merkel has indicated she is lukewarm about this and will wait for NATO discussions on the matter. Aside from the Afghanistan war, Trump has made clear he wants members to meet minimum contributions and spend 2% of their gross national income on defense. European leaders expect to hear a reaffirmation that NATO's anti-terrorism work extends beyond Europe and the Atlantic.
And to help us out with the U.S. president's demands, we are joined once again on Skype from the Belgian capital of Brussels by VOA European correspondent Luis Ramirez, whose report you just heard, and also on Skype from Sicily by VOA White House Bureau Chief Steve Herman, who is traveling with the president. Steve Herman, I'm going to talk to you first. President Trump obviously was bound to ruffle some feathers in Brussels given his past campaign rhetoric, but the headline this week seems to be Trump scolds NATO countries for not paying their fair share. Is he getting any traction on that, Steve?
Well, this message has been made clear, and we've heard commitments from various NATO leaders as well as the Secretary General that, yes, they understand that they're not living up to their pledge of 2% GDP to be committed to defense. And as the president said in his remarks, this is not fair to American taxpayers. I don't think any of the other NATO members found his comments as a huge surprise, and he has shifted on NATO. He had said when he was running for president that the alliance was obsolete. Then when he was side by side at the White House with the NATO Secretary General, he said NATO is no longer obsolete because it can take this role in fighting terrorism. But a lot of NATO members are concerned, especially those on the Eastern Front, that NATO was set up as a bulwark against the Soviet Union, now Russia, and that is a problem right now, and that NATO really needs to focus on that rather than getting involved in everything around the world practically.
Right. And Luis, I'm curious, does the president have a point if only 23 of the 28 NATO countries are actually spending the 2% of GDP stipulated by NATO? Are those countries living up to their own obligations?
Well, you know, it's an interesting point because we're not talking about poor countries. We're talking about Germany, the richest economy in Europe, but not making its contributions. But also, you know, these countries have a very difficult political situation, and that is that if they cut defense spending, if they boost defense spending, then they're going to have to cut into social programs. These countries are heavily dependent on their welfare. Social welfare programs, and so politically it's a very hard sell for them.
Steve, you know, for some European leaders, this was their first opportunity to size up the new U.S. president. In your perception, how was he received by our NATO partners? Were there any awkward moments there?
Well, there was a very interesting handshake with Macron of France. Where they both were seemingly in a contest to see who could hold on to the handshake the longest and the hardest. And then, of course, there's been that video of President Trump shoving aside the Montenegrin leader, sort of giving him a push or an elbow to get to the center of the photo where he is supposed to be. And I don't even think the president knew who the other gentleman was. So, you know, some interesting optics from the meeting, but I think this plays directly to Trump's base in the United States. They see him standing up, not being intimidated, talking tough, and keeping to some degree with what he said to get elected president.
Now, Luis, where you are in Brussels, I'm wondering how Belgians are seeing this U.S. president. After all, he did call Brussels once a hellhole. I don't know if he's changed his view on that. What was his reception like, at least with among the Belgian public?
Well, you had a very large demonstration on the day before the summit to tell him that he was not welcome here in Belgium. That was I should say, though, that was a fixture in these things. Every time there is a NATO summit, thousands of organizers flock to Brussels, both from within Belgium and throughout Western Europe, to voice their opposition to the alliance itself, to the existence of the alliance itself. So this time they had two things to protest against: the summit of NATO, and the presidency and the presence of Trump himself here in Brussels.
And there he is. And Steve, I guess what NATO partners really were interested in hearing was U.S. some kind of reassurance of U.S. commitment to NATO's Article 5, which is essentially an agreement that an attack against one NATO member country is an attack on all. Did Trump affirm his support for Article 5?
Not explicitly, and that was a matter of some controversy, and Press Secretary Sean Spicer and others said, look, he was there at this ceremony which was tied to Article 5, and the only time it's been invoked, of course, was September 11th, 2001, when the United States was attacked, and so he didn't need to say the words, according to Sean Spicer, and he actually accused the media of playing cutesy with that. But obviously, I think a number of people were disappointed not to hear it come out of the mouth of the president.
Luis, I'm curious, did the subject of Russia come up at all?
It did. In fact, President Trump, in listing the top security threats to the alliance, listed Russia, which may have surprised some people. And later, when the NATO chief, Jens Stoltenberg, briefed reporters after President Trump left, he said that Russia was very much in discussions. No details given, but he did say that the alliance would continue its two-prong approach to Russia, of diplomacy, but also of action, that is, bolstering the members of the alliance that are on the eastern flank.
Okay, that's all the time I have for this segment, but thank you, Luis Ramirez in Brussels and Steve Herman in Sicily. Stick around. Time for another quick break right now, but when we come back, we go to Capitol Hill, the scene this week of direct testimony on Russia's role in the 2016 U.S. presidential election and how much, if any, Trump campaign officials knew about it. But first, a reminder, we do want to hear from you. Share your thoughts, questions, and comments on our Facebook page. The address is VOA The Correspondents. We'll be right back.